Is the cash. The day's top stories, the best bets, and Jason Page. This is the Cash In Early Edition.
Yes, it is on a Friday, September 22nd, 2023. That's Friday, September 22nd, 2023. Good to have you with us. Whether it's on one of our video streaming platforms, X at the back page, on Twitch, Jason Page 77, on Facebook, or on YouTube, just look for the Cash In with Jason Page. Lot to get to over the next 60 minutes. Page versus the Prince, the Week 3 edition with this guy, Sam Yarnell, who's got his dukes up. He's ready to go. Oh, boy.
The winners are coming. The winners are coming.
I hope, because they weren't last week. I was 1-3. You were 1-2-1. Could have called Joe Fortenbaugh and Anita Marks if I needed that. God. It's like throwing at a dartboard, picking teams that way. Well, you might be good at darts. Maybe you could just hit the team you'd want to pick anyway.
Fortenbaugh does have better hair than I do.
Oh, Fortenbaugh's so bad. God.
He's got better hair than I do.
God. He just screams used car salesman. He really does.
Not getting into it.
No,
Not getting into it.
I respect that. You don't have to. My battles are my battles. It's fine. He just screams used car salesman, though. He really does. Like, I look at him and I just say, oh, yeah. He's going to sell me my next used Buick.
Gosh.
Good to have you all with us today on the show. Jamie Eisenberg will stop by in about 12 minutes or so, or whenever I get to it. And we'll talk some fantasy football with him. DFS, baby. I was just saying to Sam before we started up the stream, it feels like DFS is like the redheaded stepchild of the money-making sports world. Like, once sports betting became legal, it just feels like DFS went. But every time I go on to DraftKings to play on the weekends, there's still tons of tournaments and tons of contests, rather, and people are in them. And so somebody's still playing to the tunes of probably pretty large numbers. We're trying to get Sam to do the DFS. I did some DFS. I have cashed both of the first 2 weeks, so
there you go.
But I'm doing pretty low level stuff because I got a budget I got to work on. I'm a startup business owner.
There you go.
So I got to be kind of careful. All right, Thursday Night Football. I guess none of us should be shocked. We saw it coming. We knew the Giants were going to lose. The question was just by how much they would lose. And we found out. They got throttled pretty good last night in Santa Clara against the 49ers. And here's what stands out to me, Sam, and it's this. The 49ers didn't even play that well. And they still are. I mean, look, I'm sorry. I've said this before. I did it last on Monday when we did the 20-second recaps and posted that online. They're inevitable to me. If they are healthy, they are inevitable to me to come out of the NFC. I think they are better than the Eagles. If we're given rankings right now, I'll go. As a matter of fact, I'd probably put Philadelphia 3 on the list. I'd probably right now, as of today, go San Francisco, Dallas, Philadelphia. We saw this effort last night, from the Niners, and Brock Purdy got off to a slow start. Giant fans in the first quarter might have thought, hey, we got a snowball's chance in this game. We might be able to do something here. But it just wasn't meant to be. Especially with no Saquon Barkley. And boy, oh boy, if you ever had a case, if you're Saquon Barkley and a running back in this league for why guys got to get paid, what that offense looked like last night without Saquon Barkley in it was all the evidence you and your agent need to go to the Giants and say, you know what? This is why you got to pay me and pay me better.
Listen.
I'm listening.
Okay. We got to back this up. We have like 3 steps.
Okay.
First of all, Brock Purdy, fraud. Absolute fraud. Showed it last night. Not a competent quarterback. Imagine if this team had a quarterback that could make a Pro Bowl, right? Like, imagine if this team had a quarterback that was actually a gifted passer and was talented in the pocket and that kind of thing. Like, if this team had a real quarterback, they'd walk to the Super Bowl. Because they don't, they're going to be held back from doing so. Exactly what you mentioned with the health already becoming a problem. Brandon Ayuk missed last night, and it showed in their passing game. It really did. Brandon Ayuk has been one of the best wide receivers since week 9 of last season in terms of targets, receptions, and receiving yards. And it was a glaring hole in their offense last night. Christian McCaffrey, dude, is a walking injury, right? It's just a matter of time. Deebo Samuel, with the lack of Brandon Ayuk, couldn't get going, right? He's supposed to be this, fluid wide back kind of thing. He really didn't shine in either the passing or the running game last night. They got very lucky they scored 30 points. It's because they had so many possessions, because really the highlight of that team is the defense. And I don't know why we don't talk about that defense more, because quite frankly,
we take it for granted. We take it for granted.
We do.
That's why.
Exactly. That's okay. All right, but they should have had 2 more points than they did. There should have been a safety in, what was that, the first quarter?
No, that wasn't a safety. Forward progress. He was outside the end zone.
Yes, right. I understand that by the book, that wasn't a safety. However, let's reevaluate that rule, because Daniel Jones was very clearly not trying to move forward out of the end zone, right? He was trying to evade Bosa.
I get it.
By the way, that defensive front, that defensive line for San Francisco, incredibly athletic. Like, just the pure raw athleticism on that defensive line is, I think, probably second to none in the NFL. Now, that's not to say they have the best defensive line at the end of the day, but they're probably the most athletic. Listen, their injuries are going to hold this team back. It's as simple as that. It's injuries and having an incompetent quarterback.
I refuse to go with the Brock Purdy is incompetent argument. And on a night where their offense wasn't even that great, they still put up over 400 yards of offense in that game. By the way, let's note for the listeners some things we liked yesterday on the show. I liked Daniel Jones over 39.5 rushing yards, as I think you did. That did not happen. Brock Purdy, though, over 229.5, which I thought was a lock. He went well past that at 310. But we did not think that you'd get both Christian McCaffrey over 79.5 and Purdy over 229.5. And we did. McCaffrey went for 85 on the ground and a score. So now we got to reevaluate, sometimes how we look at these things when you see that sort of situation.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. When you're looking at a game where your team is going to have 32 more plays run than the opponent,
TOP
that's
was brutal.
Bound to happen.
Oh, yeah, TOP
right?
was
And
brutal.
we talked about it. We talked about it on the show. We talked about it on the show yesterday, how all the numbers with the 49ers were inflated. And that's why I didn't want to touch any of the props, because, yeah, it did happen. They ended up having way more possessions and way longer possessions than their opponent. But that's never a guarantee, right? There was always a chance that, Matt Breida came in and just 3 yards in a cloud of dust every time, and the Giants just ran the hell out of the ball and the air out of the clock, right? Like, that was totally possible, and that's why I was completely going to stay away from any Niners props individually, because at the end of the day, there was no chance that they weren't going to necessarily come to relying on exactly one person in that offense. Luckily, that person ended up being Christian McCaffrey, but it just as easily could have been Deebo Samuel. It just as easily could have been, Brandon Ayuk if he weren't hurt. They're George Kittle, right? There are a plethora of weapons in that offense, which is why when it comes to betting, I'm never comfortable tying myself to just one.
Yeah, I agree with you.
However,
yes,
the Niners have scored exactly 30 points in each of their first 3 games. I gave you the team total over 27.5 at even money. That was a lock. Hope you used the boost. Hope you put the double unit max wager on it like I told you to. But we need to start thinking about exactas with this team. Really, it's going to be 49ers to score exactly 30 points. That's going to be the bet next week.
I would agree. I think that is a fair assessment. I wonder how much of this game, though, boils down to, and I know what side you're going to weigh in on with this. You're going to say this game is more about how bad the Giants were minus Saquon Barkley than it is how good the Niners are. Or am I wrong? A little bit of both?
I think this game was the Giants being the Giants. I think that's what we're going to get from them this year. Saquon or not, I don't think that he really, and this may be a hot take, I don't think he adds a ton to that specific offense. Not to say that he's a bad running back. I just don't think that in that offense he adds a ton.
You just saw last night what they miss without him, though.
Really?
Yes.
When they had him in the first half against Arizona, what'd they do? Against Arizona!
They rushed the ball for 26 yards last night, Sam. You cannot say he would not have made a noticeable difference or impact in that game.
When any team is missing their starting running back, there's going to be a noticeable difference, right?
It's a big difference. It matters.
But simply because of numbers, right? You don't have the money to go out and pay someone to be another good running back, right? Or if you do, they're just a really good backup. When you're missing your RB1, you're always going to have a struggle in the run game. I would love to see the breakdown in terms of numbers of how many teams rush for even more than, 150 yards as a team, or 100 yards as a team when their starting running back is hurt. And inactive. That'd be a very interesting breakdown to me because I would bet you dollars to donuts that the number's very low and that it doesn't happen very often. To the original question, this game was the 49ers defense showing out and a little bit of an indictment on the 49ers offense, right? They showed that when they don't have exactly all their weapons, they don't look like the same team because as much as we can look at the numbers and say, yeah, they had 300 passing yards and, they scored 30 points in a 60-minute football game. Sure. But at the end of the day, you and I watched that football game and they did not look like the same offense they did in week 1 and 2.
Here's the thing. Most weeks, they don't have to have most of their pieces, because they're so far superior at so many key positions on the field that they don't need to have. When they need to have their full complement of players? Just get me to the playoffs. That's it.
And when didn't they have that last year? When didn't they have their full complement of players last year?
I agree. And you saw what happened when Brock Purdy was hurt, in that game. But assuming health, which none of us can do, I don't know how you'd put anybody ahead of them. I haven't seen anything that puts anybody in the NFC ahead of them if they are healthy. And they're going to be good enough throughout the season that they're probably going to wind up being a 1 seed. They'll probably have home field throughout the postseason. I'd be shocked if they didn't, because the Cowboys and the Eagles are, there's going to be a lot of attrition there within that division and with those schedules. I still think it's San Francisco's to... look, I think they are in the NFC title game at worst. And at best, they're a Super Bowl winner. It's not a bad place to be. And let's be honest about it. That's not a bad place to be if you're a franchise in week 3 of the NFL season.
I agree with you. You're right. But I'm never...
We could just stop there. I'm right. I like that.
No. Because I'm never going to buy in. I'm never going to buy in on an offense that has... Trent Williams, with his injury history, protecting the blind side of a second-year quarterback out of Iowa State. He's from Iowa State. Let's not forget that's the offense that produced him. with a running back who has the injury history of Christian McCaffrey. I'm never going to buy into that when the offense is supposed to be the best part of this team, right? And don't get me wrong. It's a very good defense. They'll get to the divisional round on their defense alone, but you're not going to get farther than that with this team because the offense, as much as if they were the healthiest team in the world, they'll walk to the Super Bowl, right? If nobody gets hurt, they'll walk to the Super Bowl. But you could say the same about the Kansas City Chiefs. You could say the same about the Cincinnati Bengals. It's playing out right in front of our eyes with the Cincinnati Bengals, right?
I don't know if I feel the same way about the Bengals. And right now, I don't even know if I feel the same way about the Chiefs, that even assuming health, those teams are walking. And by the way, I don't think the 49ers walk to the Super Bowl. I think whoever they meet in the NFC title game is going to, and that's why I say worst case scenario, you're in the NFC title game. I don't think it's a walk for them if they have to play Dallas or Philadelphia in an NFC title game matchup. I don't think that at all.
I think they're going to lose to the Lions in the playoffs.
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm. I think something is going to happen like week 16.
Lions are still 1 year away.
That's going to derail their season. I'm not saying that the Lions are going to be some majestic team in the playoffs and go all the way on a Cinderella Super Bowl run, but I think that I think the Niners are going to have some weird injury, some weird falling out. Maybe someone gets suspended in like week 16, week 17, maybe even it's week 18. And then they go into, maybe they have a first round bye because they've been so good. Maybe they walk through whatever wild card team it is. Maybe the Bucs sneak in and get a wild card berth. They'll meet the Lions in the divisional round and they'll somehow lose to them because of all the turmoil. And then the Lions will lose to the Eagles in the NFC Championship game.
Well, there you go. See, you don't even need to watch the rest of the NFL season.
That's right.
Sam Yarnell has the script. Stand by. We're going to talk with Jamie Eisenberg of CBS Sports. Does a great job on fantasy football. Then the Prince and I, Sam Yarnell, will have Page versus the Prince, Week 3 edition. We'll get into the 4 games we like the most, or the 4 picks we like the most. Stick around for that. It's the Cash In. We say hello to our friend Jamie Eisenberg, who does a terrific job. All things fantasy football, CBS Sports, CBS Sports Line, all that great stuff. Joins us here on the show. And we say hello to our friend Jamie Eisenberg, who does a terrific job. All things fantasy football, CBS Sports, CBS Sports Line, all that great stuff. Joins us here on the show. All right, Jamie. We say hello to our friend Jamie Eisenberg, who does a terrific job. All things fantasy football, CBS Sports, CBS Sports Line, all that great stuff. Joins us here on the show. All right, Jamie. Start at the quarterback position this week, week 3 in the NFL. I mean, look, Kirk Cousins, I know he's 6,900. He almost feels like a bargain when you match him up against a Chargers team that can't stop a peewee football team these days.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for him. Got off to a great start. One of 2 quarterbacks with at least 300 yards passing in each of the first 2 games. Run game's a little bit suspect. High point total of the week. He's definitely going to be popular for a lot of DFS players, but certainly in redraft leagues, if he's been sitting on your bench because you drafted somebody else, you should fire him up because, like you said, that Chargers defense is not very good so far. As Tua Tagovailoa exposed them, and even Ryan Tannehill last week. So, love the setup for Kirk Cousins.
You think Cam Akers gets some carries in that game?
I think he'll get some. He knows the system just because there's some familiarity with Kevin O'Connell when he was on the Rams staff. So I would not be surprised, but it also wouldn't shock me if he's inactive just because they want to keep giving Ty Chandler a chance and maybe Myles Gaskin. But there still should be an Alexander Madison game, so I would not be planning to use Cam Akers in any stretch.
We'll get back to that game and Justin Jefferson when we get into wide receivers. How do you feel about Russell Wilson at $5,900? Less expensive option, game where you feel like Denver will have to ultimately throw it to keep up with this prolific Miami offense. I loved what I saw for the most part out of Wilson last week, where it felt like he had his best game in a Denver uniform. Give me some thoughts on Russell Wilson.
Yeah, he's looked much better through the 2 games with Sean Payton, but I'm not super excited about him this week. He's a good contrarian play because of how much they'll probably be throwing, but he also, I think, is getting a little bit of a step up in competition because not only is the Dolphins defense good, you got the Vic Fangio narrative. He's a defensive coordinator for the Dolphins. Sean Payton wanted to hire him. They just couldn't get on the right page. And also, he was a former head coach of Denver, so he's probably going to dial up some things to make Russell Wilson uncomfortable. There's also, as a defense, I think that will be able to contain this passing attack and put some pressure on Wilson. And you get the fact that this is Denver's first road game, Broncos' first road game since the second week of the preseason. So they haven't left Denver in a month. So the humidity, the heat of Miami, I think, could get to this offense a little bit, this entire team. So I don't love Russell Wilson's setup, but if they are chasing points, maybe you get a 50-yard Hail Mary and you get lucky again like you saw last week.
All right, who do you like? I mean, Desmond Ridder at Detroit could be an option. He's $5,000 on DraftKings. Give me something else you like in the QB bargain bin.
I'm going to go back to Justin Fields. I know everybody's running away from him. I understand it, but this could be a garbage time game for him. And understanding that the design runs haven't been there, I think that's something they'll correct a little bit. So he's somebody I'd be looking at from a cheap perspective. I don't know. I haven't really looked at the cheaper quarterbacks. It really just feels like a good week to go chalk at that position just because there are so many good options. But Jared Goff is on the relatively cheap side. I know that game feels like it's going to be low scoring because how much teams like to run the ball. But we do not have David Montgomery. I don't think that that's going to change what Jared Goff does at home. And at home, he's been really successful. So Goff is somebody I look at a lot in this week's slate as well.
Andy Dalton?
Maybe, he'll be better than Bryce Young, so if you really want to go cheap at QB, he could certainly come into play.
Move to running backs. What intrigues you there? Jerome Ford, perhaps in Cleveland. I know they've made some moves at that position with Kareem Hunt. Is he going to get enough carries to negate the impact of a Jerome Ford? What are you thinking at running back?
So in redraft leagues, I think you might be playing Jerome Ford because you lost Nick Chubb. In DFS, I'd be staying away. The Titans' run defense, I know they've got kind of lucky a little bit because of who they play because they got a backup in Jamal Williams and then a backup in Joshua Kelly. But now they're getting a backup in Jerome Ford as well. And so you go back to last year, they were top 2 in fewest fantasy points allowed to running backs. I don't think that's a fluke. So I don't think this is going to be a good week for Jerome Ford. My favorite play is actually to go back to Joshua Kelly, just because Austin Eckler probably not going to play, just dealing with that ankle injury. And he did all the work last week, played over 70% of the snaps. It's the highest projected point total. Basically, there's no exposure from right now. That'll certainly change once we find out that Eckler is most likely ruled out. But he's my favorite DFS play just based on his price and his chances to produce this week.
How about Brian Robinson?
I'm a little nervous, again, going back to that matchup. I think what we saw last week was when they were chasing points early in the first half and they got down, I think it was 21-3, we did not see Brian Robinson play a lot. And then they take the lead, and Brian Robinson was a big part of that. But this Bills run defense, I know we look at week 1 and say, wow, Breece Hall was awesome. 10 carries, 127 yards. He ripped off an 83-yard run. If you take that out, they shut down Josh Jacobs last week, and they really contained the Jets' running attack in that first game, again, aside from the big run for Breece Hall. So I'm a little bit nervous about what we could see from Brian Robinson against Buffalo's defense, especially if the Bills' offense shows up. But just keeping an eye on the weather there, it might end up being a lot of production on the ground. But I just don't think if he doesn't score and the lack of work in the passing game, I think we could be left a little bit short with Brian Robinson in this matchup.
Talking with Jamie Eisenberg, CBS Sports Fantasy Football, does a great job there. Over at wide receiver, I know he's $9,300 on DraftKings, but can you find someone inexpensive, at the other wide receiver spots to pair Justin Jefferson with where it makes sense to pay for him at that price?
So one of my favorite plays is Nathaniel Dell for the Texans. We saw last week, 10 targets, 7 catches. Noah Brown's on IR. I think we're going to see them throwing a lot, moving forward because the run game right now is a little bit suspect, mostly due to the offensive line woes. And I guess we have to anticipate with the secondary issues for the Texans that we could see Trevor Lawrence in the passing attack for the Jaguars, really the offense for the Jaguars, putting up points that they're chasing there. So I love the setup for him and even his teammate Robert Woods. You mentioned Andy Dalton. You want to go cheap. The receiving core for the Panthers is going to look much better with Andy Dalton throwing them the ball. I know that sounds funny to say, but Bryce Young's just been, a work in progress, understandably so. So Jonathan Mingo, DJ Chark, Thielen had a big game last week, so maybe the most obvious of the three, but you can look at those type of guys. Josh Reynolds is still relatively cheap. He's been good for the Lions so far. So there are some options you can, certainly go and take a look at. And then, just keep an eye on some of the injuries. Green Bay, Miami, some of these receiving corps are dealing with injuries. We could see some of these guys have to step up and help out their respective quarterback.
How do you feel about Romeo Doubs?
A little bit nervous this week, but, again, 2 touchdowns in week 1. I think he's getting healthier. I'm curious how this is all going to look when Christian Watson's back, because I think he'll open things up for the entire passing game. But for this week, it's a tough go. But, again, you want to be contrarian, so he might find the end zone.
Over at tight end, I'm a sucker for Kyle Pitts. I just keep waiting for that bust-out moment from this guy. He had 5 targets last week. He goes against a Detroit team where you'd think there could be some opportunities. Ritter could be a decent play, this weekend as well if you're looking for a bargain. Give me some thoughts on Kyle Pitts and whether or not he's ever going to realize his potential.
This is a very good landing spot because the Lions so far have allowed the most receiving yards to tight ends, and they did that in a week 1 game where Travis Kelce did not play against them. So, I think if you want to play narrative, you want to see Detroit playing with the lead, like we saw last week, Falcons, having to keep up with the Packers, and Desmond Ritter having to throw. If we get to what we saw in week 1 where they were just run, then it's going to be tough. And last week it was the Drake London game. Maybe this week is the Kyle Pitts game. The only thing that gives me a little bit of a pause, and I do think for DFS he's fantastic because I think people for the most part are running away from him, is Jonnu Smith actually outplayed him, the second tight end there for Atlanta. So I hope that's just the byproduct of how the game flow unfolded. Ritter did miss him on an end zone throw, so he could find the end zone this week. But this is a pretty good landing spot, and I'm going to be playing a lot of Kyle Pitts myself.
Evan Engram at $4,800 against the Texans.
Yeah, it's not bad. Again, just looking at the injuries in the secondary for Houston. So, at some point he's going to have a breakout game, and Zay Jones is a little bit banged up too. So, it might be, that's the third receiver, third passing option, that they're leaning on with Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk doing the majority of the damage there. So, just keep an eye on the Texans secondary. But yeah, I don't mind Evan Engram.
Great job as always, Jamie Eisenberg. Check out his work, CBS Sports. Good to catch up with you, my friend. Be well.
You too. Take care.
So that's what Jamie has to say about fantasy football. I'll be curious to see what we get out of this weekend. I am a Kyle Pitts sucker, man. I just keep waiting for that moment where Kyle Pitts is going to show up because there's so much talent there, and I don't know if it's a product of the QB situation. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I keep waiting for that moment where it's going to click for Kyle Pitts, and it just hasn't happened yet. What, Sam? You don't think it's ever going to click for him? I don't hear you. You got to turn your mic on, I think.
My bad.
No worries.
I've been a Kyle Pitts investor in fantasy for 2 seasons now, and it's freaking Groundhog
fruitless.
Day.
It's fruitless.
It's Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
It's so annoying. I hate it.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, it is Friday, ladies and gentlemen. Friday. And it's my favorite day of the week because it means that I go toe-to-toe with our young prognosticator. He is not the groundhog. He referenced Groundhog Day. But he is the Prince of Picks. And so far, he is having a better season than me. It's time for Paige versus the Prince.
It's Friday, and that means it's time for the weekly face-off for sports betting bragging rights. It's Paige versus the Prince on the cash-in.
So, I am 3-5 on the season. Joe Fortenbaugh, Anita Marks-like. Sam Yarnell is 4-3-1 on the early season. And Sam, that means you get to decide if you want to pick first or if you would like to defer.
I'm going to go first this week.
All right, I like it.
I've gone second the first 2 weeks. I'll go first this week, spice it up, maybe give you some more of that back-ended bottom half of the inning luck.
Okay.
All right, so we'll lead things off. First pick this week is the Kansas City-Chicago under 48.5. Now, shout out to my friend Warren Sharp for this intel. Go check his stuff out at Sharp Football Analysis. But the under in Kansas City Chiefs games since, I believe, 2019 is the time period, when their opponents score less than 20 points, the under is like 89% or something like that. Do I think the Chicago Bears are going to score 20 points this weekend against the Kansas City defense led by Chris Jones? God, no, I don't. What are we talking about? It's Justin Fields, who's looked like hot garbage this year. I love this under because of that and because of a bunch of other things, right? I still don't think this Kansas City offense has quite figured out where they're at. They do not have the plethora of weapons that they're used to. Sky Moore has not panned out the way they wanted him to. Isaiah Pacheco has not seemingly taken the step up that they all thought he was going to this season. I think the Chiefs win this one handily. And I don't think they score a ton of points, either team in this game. Kind of like what we saw in the Jags-Chiefs game this last week, right? So under 48.5, that's my first play out in Chicago, or out in Kansas City between the Bears and the Chiefs. Now, I love the over 53.5 in the Chargers-Vikings game. It's a high number, I know, and I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid on this game. I think we're going to have another shootout because, like I said last week, or going into last week, I think the Chargers are going to find themselves in every game being 27-24 or 35-28. I think all of their games this season are going to be high-scoring and close. So whenever I see a big spread, I'm going to take the Chargers with the points, and whenever I see a high number, I'm still going to go over it with this Chargers offense. Now, add in the fact that the Minnesota Vikings have looked really good on offense, especially Kirk Cousins, who's thrown 6 touchdowns to just 1 interception so far this season. I love the over in this game. Give me all the points between the Vikings and the Chargers this weekend. Let's get to the sides. My first side is the Lions laying the 3 against Atlanta. Now, this is going to be a low-scoring game. You could sell me on the under in this one as well, but I just love the Lions this year. I think they're a fun football team, and I'm not quite sold on the Atlanta offense. I think they run the ball just a hair too much. This is going to be a weird game. I'm predicting that right now, and we may see a push with a 3-point spread, but I really like the Lions minus the 3 in this one. My last pick, I'm a homer. You got to give it to me. Give me the Bills. Lay the 6.5 in Southern Maryland against the Commanders. Listen, I think this game is going to be a blowout. I think the Bills are just going to throw the ball all over the Commanders secondary. It's something they haven't done a lot this season, is throw the ball deep. Josh Allen throwing the ball short and intermediate a lot more than we've seen him do early season in the past. And I think that's kind of a result of that week 1 abomination we saw at New York. They're going to get right in this game, and they're going to do it in loud fashion, especially with the deep ball. I'm going to go over on Josh Allen's passing props in this game. I'm going to go over on Josh Allen completions in this game. I'm going to go over on Josh Allen longest completion in this game. Same with Stephon Diggs' longest reception. Same with Gabe Davis' longest reception. I think that the Bills are going to air the ball out in this game, and they're going to score a lot of touchdowns. Give me the Bills laying 6.5 against the Commanders. Oh no.
You took 2 of my games.
Oh.
You took 2 of my games, so I just spent the last 5 minutes scrambling for backup games. You took 2 of my games.
That's why
Which 2 of my games do you think you took?
Well, just based on your reaction that I was able to see.
Then you know.
I think it was the Lions, right?
Definitely the Lions. Yep. Lions were on the list.
The Chargers-Vikings over just seems kind of public.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Killing me,
So my
Smalls.
two
You're
most
killing
public
me.
Plays.
You're killing me. All right. So Sam's picks, you've heard them. Bears Chiefs under 48.5. Over 53.5 in Chargers Vikings. Lions -3 against the Falcons, and the Bills -6.5. Let's get to the main event, shall we? Yeah. Let's go. Come on. All right, game number 1. It is the Vikings and the Chargers, but instead of the total, we'll go Vikings -1.5. It's a must-have game for the Vikings. I do think it's going to be a high-scoring affair. And I think it's going to be a close game. So why would I pick the Chargers in a close game? Vikings will figure out a way. -1.5 at home against the Chargers. Love the over at 53.5, but for the purposes of Page versus the Prince, Vikings at home -1.5 against the Chargers. Kirk Cousins, big numbers. You want a DFS play for Sunday? Kirk Cousins at 6,900. Find a way to pair him with Justin Jefferson. I don't care how much it costs. Go cheap somewhere else. That's the stack. Dolphins -6.5 at home against the Broncos. Look, it's easy for me. You ride the horse till she bucks. Pun not intended. Or you ride the dolphin until she bucks in this case. Dolphins -6.5 is a no-brainer. Till somebody shows me they can beat the Miami Dolphins, I don't see it. Broncos are 0-2, and they lost to two teams that were supposed to be the winnable parts of their schedule, with the Commanders and the Raiders. To me, it's a simple. Love the Dolphins -6.5. Nobody's shown they can slow this team down. As long as they're healthy, they're the class of the AFC East, ladies and gentlemen. Simple. Going with the Dolphins -6.5, game number 2. Game number 3 takes us to the Emerald City of Seattle. Give me the Seattle Seahawks -5.5 at home against Carolina. Andy Dalton is starting at quarterback. Andy Dalton is starting at quarterback. Andy Dalton is starting at quarterback. That's all you need to repeat to yourself. This number almost seems suspiciously low to me. And when I see suspiciously low lines, I tend to run the other way. But I also have a philosophy that every week the bookmakers, the odds makers, they get one badly wrong. And I think this is one. Might be my favorite pick of the week, in fact. Seahawks -5.5 at home against Carolina, game number 3. And because I had to scramble for a fourth game due to the Prince taking 2 of my picks, we're going to ride with my Buccaneers at home against the Eagles on Monday night. I don't know if they win, but I could see it being a field goal game. I could see it being a 10-point game late and Baker Mayfield getting a garbage touchdown late to make it a 3-point game. Onside kick, make it interesting late. The Eagles have not wowed me in the early going. They've been okay. And I don't think okay is enough to get it done on the road against a team that believes it can win. And I will keep saying this, do not underestimate the power of a team that thinks it could win every week. And right now, this team feels like it's got that vibe to it. I don't know if it's going to be this crazy feel-good story by the time we get to the end of the year. But it is right now. And I say it all the time. One of my favorite things to say, and my friends who used to play football get mad at me. Teams don't know they suck early on in the year. And if you believe that about the Buccaneers, I think they're in this game. I wouldn't be shocked if they won this game. I think Philadelphia's due for a little wake-up call. Kind of coasting through the first 2 weeks. Buccaneers are plus 194 on the money line. But I'll ride with the Bucs plus 4.5, game number 4. So to finish it out, Vikings minus 1.5, Dolphins minus 6.5, Seahawks minus 5.5, the Bucs plus 4.5 at home against the Eagles. Page's picks, Page versus the Prince, week 3 in the NFL. Sam, I know you've got other obligations today, so we're going to say so long to you. Any final words before we sweep you off the screen?
Hopefully, when we're talking on Monday, previewing Monday Night Football,
Yes.
giving the people more winners. I'm ready for an undefeated weekend, Jason. I will see you on Monday, my man.
All right. Have a good one, my friend. Sam Yarnell, ladies and gentlemen. Doing a good job as always. And that is Page versus the Prince here on the show. I'm curious to see what happens with Andy Dalton this week. There's been a lot of talk about this calf injury. I don't know how you could afford not to play him if you're Cincinnati in this spot, given the fact that you're 0-2, an unexpected 0-2 start for this Cincinnati Bengals team. I mean, it's a must-have game. I think 0-2 is surmountable in a 17-game NFL season with a team as talented as Cincinnati. I said before the season started, I wanted to see urgency. Knowing that the window is now for this franchise, I needed to see urgency out of the Cincinnati Bengals. I haven't seen it yet. I saw it in the second half of last week, but that was too little too late. So I needed to see urgency out of this team. Maybe this week we get that urgency for a full 60 minutes. I don't know, because I haven't seen it so far. A lot of great games on the schedule. We'll recap all of it for you on Monday. That's going to do it for us. We'll wrap things up a little shorter today. We'll be back with you on Monday with a full recap. We'll have 30-second recaps of each game. Bill Bender will probably stop by, talk some college football. What a great weekend for college football. Obviously, so many big-time matchups, highlighted by Notre Dame and Ohio State. Saw Pat McAfee and his crew were out there today. College Game Day is going to be out there tomorrow. Colorado and Oregon, of course, the big matchup there. I'll give you a little bonus pick. I think it's 21 right now is the number on that game. We'll give you a little bonus pick. Take Colorado with the points. I don't know how you can't. Got to take Colorado with the points. 21.5 now, so you got the hook. So I'd take Colorado plus 21.5 all day. Twice on Sunday or twice on Saturday, as it would be in this case. Plus 21.5. The total 53.5. I'd probably go over on that. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Wait, total is, what was I saying? 53.5. The total is 70.5. I don't know if I'd touch that. That's a little high for me. Colorado plus 21.5. And the only other, value bet there is Colorado plus 720 on the money line. It's so tempting, but I just feel like they finally meet their match in this game. Bo Nix has had to hear about Shedeur Sanders long enough. He's probably jonesing right now for this matchup. Number 19, Colorado. Number 10, Oregon. 21.5. Take it and run with Colorado. All right, that's going to do it for us on this Friday edition of the show. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, go and get it. It's available on all your favorite podcasting platforms. That includes Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, you name it. The podcast available for you. You can watch us Monday through Friday, noon Eastern, over on Twitch, Jason Page 77. On X, formerly known as Twitter, at The Back Page. And on Facebook and YouTube. Just look for the Cash In with Jason Page. Have yourselves a great weekend. Bet responsibly. Stay within your means. Enjoy the football, both college and pro. We'll see you back here on Monday. For Sam Yarnell, thank you to Jamie Eisenberg from CBS Sports for stopping by. I'm Jason Page. Thanks for hanging out with us on the Cash In. Bye-bye.